Good morning. My name is Megan, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the CA APM Community Webcast. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. Mr. Keith Palmer, you may begin your conference.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for dialing in to today's CA APM Global Community User Webcast. My name is Keith Palmer, Vice President of the APM Global User Community. I'm accompanied today by CA's Community Programs Analyst, Melanie Gulani. Just a couple of quick announcements before we get started. We do have the Community Webcast raffle going. One lucky randomly selected community member will be chosen to receive a $100 Amazon gift card. The winner will receive an email from caapmcommunity@gmail.com. Keep your eyes open for it and make sure to check your spam folder as well. This webcast is being recorded and will be posted on the community archives. If you have any questions during the presentation, please ask in the QA panel in the WebEx, not in the chat window. Make sure you do it in the QA panel. This presentation will take about 60 minutes. It'll take the full hour. We appreciate all the activity on the message boards. Thank you all for your participation. Today, our presenter is Omar Ocampo, a CA advisor, and he will be presenting information on APM app maps and new field extensions. Again, if you have any questions, please ask in the QA panel on the WebEx. Omar will answer your questions at the end of the session. That's all I have. Omar, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Keith. How do I share my my screen? Can you make me a presenter?
Yep, I just passed you the ball. You should be able to share your screen out now.
All right. Okay, so it's setting up Event Center. 1 second. I guess it's uploading my my client. Okay, so I'm a percent. How do I share? Where do I do? Share my desktop. Good. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right, good stuff. Let's get started. Let me open up my slide. Thank you, Keith, for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. My name is Omar Ocampo, pre-sales advisor. I'm going to talk to you guys about AppMap Instrumentation for custom applications. Basically, how do we configure, applications that are not supported out of the box in the AppMap node, right? Then, if time permits, I'm going to go over some of the field extensions that I've written, which are very handy for troubleshooting and diagnosing problems, application problems. Let's see how it goes. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. This is a little technical, so I hope you guys are fine with it. Let's jump to it. AppMap features. AppMap, you guys know what the AppMap is, right? It provides a built-in graphical dependency map which shows the dependency relationship between application or business process and its logical infrastructure component. I'm sure you guys have seen this. I'm going to fly through this because the bulk of it is, on the lab. This is the typical triage map. Those are nodes, right, and the lines connected to it. Out of the box configuration, Introscope will look for several standard types of applications and application components, and it will map these properly without any additional configuration. The components that we support are servlets, right, for front ends, .NET ASP pages, EGBs, both as entry points and as backends, databases, sockets, web services, okay? But that's about it, right? So if you have something that, a backend, for instance, or a front end, something that is not servlet or one of these standard components, then we do not render in the AppMap, okay? And so for that, we need to do custom configuration. Right, so the presentation will show you, what I'm going to attempt to do is to show you guys how to provide new instrumentation for AppMap display, okay? We're going to go over a couple of exercises. where we have a non-standard Java app, and we're going to instrument it to show in the AppMap. Really, what I'm talking about is having an application display where there is when you usually get this, AppMap has no data, to this, right? Where we actually go ahead and show, instrument and show the front and back end components, all right? So hopefully you'll find this useful. I know it's a hard topic. Maps, even, we, our own consultants, have issues with this. All right, let's get started. So let's jump into the lab. So I have Introscope up and running. I have nothing right now. So what I want to do is I want to configure an application. Before I start, let me show you, and I believe I have a document that was written by engineering by Martin Talley. I believe Martin Talley is on the call. I asked him to join me in case there are questions that I cannot answer. Martin Talley is our agent architect, one of our agent architects. He put this document together, very well detailed document on how to do AppMap for customer applications. Unfortunately, it's confidential. It's marked as confidential, so we can't distribute it, but I've taken a lot of the context out and made it available either through my examples and through the PowerPoint. Anyways, just want to make sure that Martin gets credit for this because it's really all his work. So to that end, so what we're going to do then is, and again, just following the document itself, we're going to define, implement a class, right, that has a front end, back end, and then we're going to go ahead and instrument it. So let's go over, let me quickly show you what the class that we're going to do, and you'll see how simple it is. So these pieces, and by the way, you're welcome, like I said, you're welcome to the whole app lab, right, where the classes and compilation and everything is, if you wanted to reproduce this in your laptop. But basically, it's a class that is composed of 3 classes: a front end, a back end, and a muck in the middle, right, a middle tier piece. The back end, all it does is a class that has one method, right, and the method is execute, and it just prints back and executing. All right, nothing to it. The muck in the middle, the piece in between, another class, right, that has one method forward, and what this guy does is instantiates the custom backend, the backend class, and just calls it, right? So prints something, a message, sleeps, and calls execute. Very simple. The next one is the front end, okay, another class, a single method that this time instantiates the muck in the middle class. It calls the forward method, which in turn is going to call the backend, and then sleeps and prints it out. That's it. That's very simple Java app. Then we have our main class, which is the one that's going to run and provide the input to our front end. So in this particular one, we instantiate our class. We're going to run it, instantiate our front end. We're going to go into a loop, right? And we're just going to, call the enter, which is the entry point in my custom front end, right? Sleep and do it again, right? So very simple. That's the class that we're going to instrument and right now. So to that end, let me bring up my Introscope profile. So we have, here's my profile. So I have something called custom AppMap, and so let me bring this one up in here, and just bear with me as I type all this. I'll go over this with you. All right. So there, I've instrumented this class. So what have I done? Just simply, I created flags, right, to represent. You guys are familiar with this, I'm sure. You can always use trace one method of class, if you don't want to use flag. But the point here is that I have identified my front end class, right, my entry points, and I have marked it with a front end marker. All right, these are just standard Introscope instrumentation. And I, created a resource name, right? I said, well, you know what? I want this under apps. This is the one that's going to show on the front end component that you guys are always see, right? The URLs and everything shows up. But again, remember, this is the non-standard, so it's a non-web-based app. And I'm going to provide the second thing, the most important thing is I'm going to provide the name of the application. In this case, I'm calling it costume app. Okay. Then I'm going to identify the backends, right? So we said we had one backend, costume backend, and I know we only have one method, but I can say, trace all method, doesn't matter. And I'm going to label it, right? I'm going to use the boundary instrumentation called backend markers. So again, I'm just, instrumenting my application, identifying my entry points, and labeling them, marking them with a front-end marker, identifying my backend calls, right? And identifying with backend markers, and then these are, your regular other classes, right? The Mac in the middle, right? Which I instrument with a regular blame point tracer. Okay, I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. Nothing to it. So let's run this application. Let's see what we get. Run app. So like I said, well, this comes up. Compiling this, if you get this, it's nothing to it, but there's no dependency, just Java, C, compile the classes. And then running it, very similar as well, right? So edit. So Java, right, the class that I'm running, and my Wally ops, right? Wally option being my Java agent, right, pointing to the agent.jar, telling it what the agent profile is, and so on and so forth. I also gave it an agent name, right? I call them costume map _ agent. Again, I'm sure you guys know this. Now let's go back to the investigator. Let me see if that agent is showing up. Sure it is. It's here. So good. I got front ends. All right, good. My front ends, remember I called them costume app. So I should have my stats in here, my responses, and I also have my backend, right? I have a backend called costume backend _ method, right? Execute, and there it is. Perfect. So this is exactly what I want. What I'll do next, make sure that everything works fine. I'm going to run a transaction trace just to see the transaction trace structure. While we wait for this, oh, there it is, good. So if I take a look at it, I got my front end, right, which is calling my Mac in the middle, which in turn is calling my backend classes, right? Very typical, okay, very simple, so good. We're good with the first part. Now we're going to go ahead and go to the triage map. We see that our costume app by app that I just defined showed up. I'm going to expand it. I got my health, which represents my front end information. I got my callbacks, right? My backend calls, right? Which in this case is this. And if I click on the costume app, I get the typical no data for selected item. But we're good, right? We're at the point that this is where you want to be at before you introduce the AppMap tracers, right? The instrumentation. I want to make sure that my app is showing in here. I want to make sure that I have my health representing my front ends and all the different backend calls that I instrumented, that I marked backend, right? Backend marker. Good. So let me kill this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add the nodes, right? So to this end, we're going to take this, and I'll go over this. Don't worry about this. This is the hard piece, right? So I'm going to go over here. I'm just going to add it. Now, what did I just add? Now, I added, in order for me to get the nodes, I need to add AppMap tracers, okay, new instrumentation point. The way this works, we need to add 2 instrumentation points, okay, to the front end, right, whatever I have identified as my front end, and 1 instrumentation point to the back end. So to the front end, I have to add an application name tracer, right, that's just simply going to be used in order to name the application. You notice in here that I have defined or mapped my new tracers. Again, I know many of you guys may not be familiar on how to define or map new tracers, but don't worry about it, right? This is always the same. this is just for as an FYI. I'm just going to go really quick on this. But I have these two classes, right, tracers out of the box. That all I'm going to do is I'm going to map them, right? So I can label them, I can configure them correctly. For instance, for the application name tracer, right? I'm going to have an owner type called application. I'm going to use blame false, new mode true. Yes, I want to use new mode. I want this to work on the 9.1 and higher agent architecture. And then for the second one, I'm going to do the same. This is a front-end node tracer, right? That it's also going to go on my front-end. And this time it's going to be a node type. It's going to be a generic front-end, right? It's not a servlet. It's not a .NET, right? It's generic front-end. The node level is method class. Again, too much detail. Owner type is application, great. And we can look at the APM, at the AppMap PVDs that we ship out of the box to see more details and more configurations and how do we configure the database and web service and so on and so forth. But this is, this will suffice for us if we're just trying to, instrument our own application. And the last one is, again, it's another AppMap marker, just like this one, right? It's another node tracer. But this time, obviously, because this is going to be applied to the backend, it's going to be configured different, right? The node type is going to be a generic backend as opposed to a generic front end, right? Node level is going to be method class. Owner type is going to be application, the same thing. Boundary type, right? It's going to be a backend. Again, these are just configurations so that this tracer knows what type of node is going to be rendering. Now that I have defined these three tracers, right? Application name tracer, front-end node tracer, and back-end node tracer, I'm going to go ahead and apply them to my classes. So anything that we identified and marked as front-end marker, right? This class, this method, we're going to go ahead and apply, right? Apply these tracers to those. So you notice in here I have the flag representing a custom front-end, the method, right? Just as I did above, but instead of using a front-end marker, I'm going to use this new tracer that I just created, right? Application name tracer, application name marker. And here's the key, right? I'm going to pass the name of the application. And the name of the application that we have selected was this, remember? Whatever we name it after the apps. In this case, we call them custom apps. So that's where I'm going to tell my tracer, my application name tracer, you know what? This is called custom app. Okay, good. That's all there's to it. Now to the second one, I'm just simply going to, again, take the front-end class method and apply my front-end node tracer. Now, one thing I should mention here is the ordering here. Again, it's a little detail, but these tracers, okay, the AppMap node tracers, they need to run before any other tracers. And so the reason why we're using this ordering is to make sure that these tracers, in fact, I need to have the application name tracer run before my front-end node tracer. And this, in turn, needs to run before any of my other tracers. For instance, this needs to run before my front-end marker. So front-end marker, I believe, is like 100 and sorry, let me delete this. Front-end marker is, I believe, it's negative 100 or negative 200. And so the lower the number, the higher the priority, right, that gets executed. So notice that I said application name tracer needs to run before my front-end node tracer. So that's why we made this guy negative 5001 and this guy negative 5000, right? So I'm guaranteeing that this is going to run first, this is going to run second, and my front-end is going to run after. Similarly for the backend, right? Whatever I have identified marked as a backend marker, right? This class, trace all method with this flag. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to apply my backend node tracer, right? Which we call it AppMap custom backend marker, right? And I'm going to pass it the same resource name that I have used in my backend marker. And that's it, right? So that's the hard part, right? Being able to define this, but again, once you have them, and you'll see, we'll use another example later on, we're going to reuse this. Once you define this, I already have my application name tracer to use. Once I define this, I already have my front-end node tracer and my back-end node tracer. Now I go ahead and apply them, right, to my front-end, back-end, and that should be it. So let's give it a try. So I save this. I'm going to rerun this, run custom app. All right, it's coming up. Let's see what we get in here. Let's wait for the Introscope to show up. All right, so we're starting to get some responses here, responses for interval. It should be the same, right? It hasn't changed. All we did was just added, 3 new instrumentation points. So if we go to the triage map, right? I think we need to refresh this a little bit. There it is, right? So that's all we've done, right? So we took what we had, the front ends, we added those 2 new tracers, right? Those 2 new AppMap tracers. One with the application name tracer, giving it the name that we want the application to have. A second one called the front end node tracer, right? Again, to the front end, and a third back end node tracer to my back ends, right? Using the same name as before, and now I get my information. Of course, once you have this, you guys probably know this. You can go ahead, add an alert. Let's try 5,000. Try 4,000. Apply. So you can set up alerts from here and so on and so forth. Let me make sure that I see a green. Okay, good. So while it waits, hopefully you guys got the gist of it, right? It was just doing the normal instrumentation. I then find the boundaries, front ends, back ends, and once I have my boundaries, right? Once my boundaries show in my front ends, then the next thing I need to do is simply put my AppMap instrumentations. This doesn't matter, but now I want to know why is this not showing? Oh, it is showing. There, green. Okay, good. Okay, hopefully this was straight, made sense. Just to reinforce, I'm going to do one more. Okay, so let's close this. What I want to do now is I'm going to take another application. This is a little bit more complex app. Let me show you what I have. This is a 3-tier. This is the application that we're going to bring up. It's a 3-tier. There's 3 JVMs running here. I have an application client that runs. It starts with login, and it makes a remote call to TCP AP call, socket call to an authentication server on this port. Gets verified, comes back, does some more execution. This gets a file from the file server. This is through port 9000, and it comes back. So we have this application. I have instrumented the application test client. I didn't instrument the server and the authentication server and the file server. Just for simplicity, for sake of simplicity, just the application test client. And what I do want to see though is the backend calls, right, to my authentication server and file server, as well as my front end. So to that end, let's do this, right? So let me go to my costume app. I'm going to go here. I'm going to switch here. This is my agent profile, right? This guy's using client socket, so I'm going to bring up client socket. And okay, don't worry about this. We're going to up and delete it. We're going to use my socket client 1. It's this simple thing. Copy. Very safe. So what am I doing here? Simply just, again, instrumenting my client request. That's one of my front-end classes, and my execute, right? This is my entry point to my application client. I'm going to label that as a front-end marker, just like I did before. I'm going to call it, I'm going to use this resource name. In my application name, I'm going to name it client app. Okay. Then I'm going to identify these are just regular classes, like the Mac in the middle, other classes. In this case, even the same class, I'm saying, you know what, I want to do a regular blame point tracer on all my methods. Okay, these are just Mac in the middle. There are no boundaries, right? They're not my front ends or back ends. It's anything in between. And lastly, I'm going to instrument my backends, right? So I said I have two backends. So I have two classes that make remote calls, one authentication client, and it's got a login method. I'm going to label that as a backend marker, and I'm going to call it authentication server, my resource name, and another one is a file RMI. I'm making an RMI call, and the method that I use is that file exists. And again, making it a backend marker. So let me save this. I'm going to bring this up. So this time for my socket, first I have to bring my authentication server. I'm going to bring my file server, my RMI server. All right, they should be up and ready. And now I'm just simply going to bring my client application, which is got Introscope, instrumented with Introscope, right? So I'm bringing this guy up, and we're going to go back to the investigator. All right, so my thing, I can get rid of this one, unmounted. So here's my client, right, the one that I just brought up. Let's take a look at my front end. So I called it client app, good, showing up. Client request execute, and my backends, right? I defined two backends, authentication server and file server. Perfect. So this is good. Let me make sure. I'm going to run transaction trace to make sure that we're good here. While we wait for the transaction to get captured, let's go take a look at the triage map. So there's my client app. Let me close this one. So here's my client app. If I open it up, right, I got my health representing my front ends, and I got my backend calls. And sure enough, that's all I've done, right? Just using the front end and back end markers, I get this, right? My authentication server, my file server. The problem is, same thing as before, right? I have no nodes showing in my AppMap, right? All right, so we're going to take care of it. Hopefully by now we understand what we need to do, and it should be very simple. By the way, these are the transaction traces that I'm capturing. Let me go back to here. Let me look at traces. We'll take out one trace, and it looks fine, right? It looks like we're making calls, execute. We call the authentication server, a backend call, come back, and then we call the file server, right, through the file RMI client. Perfect. All right, let me stop this. All right, and let me kill this, right, because we've got what we wanted. We're at this point that now we need to add AppMap instrumentation. So I wish this was interactive, because I would love for you guys to tell me what do I need to do next. All right? Hopefully you guys remember, right? What is it that we need to do next, right? So really, we said, okay, well, to my front-end classes, right, I'm going to add two AppMap tracers, one application name and the other one a front-end node. And to my backend markers, I'm going to add just one backend node tracer, right? All right, so let's take a look. Right, so again, I don't have to define them because they're already defined. Remember, we defined them in this in here. So that's what I was saying, when you get to reuse them. So I'm reusing that definition. Now I'm saying, okay, so where's my front end? Client request execute, yes. So this front end, I'm going to put the application name tracer, right? Making sure that the client, the name passed to the application name is the same name that I used on my front end. I'm going to use I'm going to do the application node tracer again to the same front end. All right, very simple. And my backend node tracer to my backends. Right now I have two backend markers, so I'm going to use them twice. Right, using the same resource name. And that's it, guys. Right, it's not too bad. Right. So ideally, if I apply, the application name tracer, the front end name tracer, and the backend node tracer, I should get my my nodes render. Well, let's give it a try. So we're going to go back. We're going to bring up client Introscope again. We're going to run it again. wait for some responses per interval. All right, this one's a little slower. Okay, good. Yeah, this application is a little slow. You can see it takes about 20 seconds. All right, good. We should be good enough. Let's get one more point to make sure that we got the information. There we go. We should be good enough. We go to my triage map. We'll refresh it a little bit, and voila. Right? I get my client app with my 2 backend servers. Right? Which then I can add, the alerts and so on and so forth. All right. So that's it for the AppMap, configuring AppMaps. Let me see. I have a little summary here. High-level steps. Then, for instrumenting, for doing AppMap instrumentation, custom AppMap instrumentation. So we run the application with agent and standard instrumentation. Okay, regular stuff. Then we need to add boundary blame instrumentation. What that means is we need to identify our front ends and back ends in our application, whatever our front ends may be, right? And as many as back ends we may have, assuming they're non-standard. Because if they're standard, then we have already picked them up and we already have done the AppMap instrumentation on them. So we're good in that respect. So we only want to do, we only want to identify obviously the backends that are not showing with the out-of-the-box configuration. Once we have this, okay, the next thing is to add the AppMap instrumentation, which is, application name tracer, right, to my front end node tracer to my front end, and backend node tracer, okay, to my backend. And I get my nodes to render. I think that's it for now. For this, we have about. This is good. I flew through this. Usually it takes me longer when I was rehearsing this. The next thing is field extension, but I want to know. I'm interested in taking some questions on the AppMap. Not sure if you guys have any questions. Where do I look? Let me see. Where's my chat node questions Q&A? There we go. So we have a bunch of questions, do we? I have no audio. Okay, that's not for me. I experience difficulty. I can listen to the recorded version at some other time. Okay. Okay, really. But no questions, guys? Straightforward. Keith, let me ask you. I'm going to ping you since you're probably unmuted. Does that make sense to you?
Makes great sense. I think this is going to be helping a lot of our community members lighting up their app maps. I mean, it's great information.
Okay, well, thanks. Oh, Tom. Thank you, Tom. I got Tom Crapata, my good old friend. Good. It's all clear. Excellent. So let's move on to take a look at some of these extensions that I've written over time. Some of them are handy. Like I said, especially for helping you expedite troubleshooting, diagnosing some application problems. The first one I want to look at is user ID transaction decorator. Some of you guys may be familiar with it. It's been around for a long time. Let me kill this. So, okay, to that end, we're going to continue with this guy. So notice that, oops, I think I got rid of it, but I did capture some transaction traces in here, but there was no user ID. Okay, so let's say we're interested in capturing the user ID for every transaction, whoever's executing the transaction. And it's not, and the user ID is not in, in one of the places that Introscope expects it to be. You've seen that the profile that, if it's in the HTTP header or if it's in the session, then we have a couple of properties for you to configure and extract it. But usually, when I work with customers, it's never there, right? Somewhere else. So we need to go and extract it. Now, obviously, the hard part is understanding where is the user ID, where is it stored, so we can extract it. But assuming that you do figure that out, either with development or however, the next thing you want to do is, well, now how do I how do I publish it, right? How do I make it show up in my transaction trace? To that end, so let me open up. I have created, and again, like I said, this is old, like this a long time ago. Projects, generic user ID. Take a look at the README first. So I created this in 2008, and then I updated it last year for for this to work on the new architecture, right? And some of you guys may be familiar, the Wiley, old Wiley customers, with GNF. Remember the generic name formatter? Well, that's what I did is I went and ripped off Peter's code, or reused, I should say, right? Peter's code in order to get the syntax, right? So this GNF allowed you to navigate objects, right, through this syntax. So, for instance, let's walk through this syntax, right? This syntax says, get the first argument. So obviously, let me take it from the top. I'm instrumenting some classes, right? Here's the method name, right? I'm applying this tracer, right, that I have defined. And now I said, okay, in this method, take the first parameter, right? Take the first object, right? And do a get session on that object, right? Once you get that object, do a get attribute and pass the key, patience being. Once you get that object, do a get mail, right? So all this is going to whack up, right? It's going to whack down the object tree, and it's eventually going to get the mail, for this user. I guess in this case, we're logging user name as the user mail. And you can sort of guess that the first parameter here is the HTTP request, right? But it could be anything else, right? So we're going to use this. We're going to use this syntax to whack or navigate to where the username may be stored, so we can extract and display it. All right. So what I need to do is I need to get my my generic user ID tracer. Right, this is the extension. So this is an agent extension that is composed of a tracer, an agent extension, right, which is a tracer, and comes with a PVD. So you're going to need two pieces, right? You're going to need the generic user ID tracer jar, which goes, you guys probably knows where it goes. It goes in the core ext directory, and I think I have it here. Right, and the next thing you're going to do is you're going to have to create a PVD for it, right? So let's use this example then. So I'm done with this. So let me go to my socket number 3, and it's this. And I'll talk about it in a minute. Client socket. So just at the end of what we were doing, we're going to add this. So what we're doing, so this user ID decorator tracer class is in that jar that we just deployed. So again, I'm doing a mapping here, right? Here's the label. I'm calling it UID, ID tracer, and I'm giving it an order, right? In this case, I want this tracer to execute after all my other blame point tracers, right? So whatever whatever tracers I have executing, I want this to come in afterwards. That's why I'm giving it a high number, right? So the other thing I want to show you quickly is, so we have client requests. So I talked to the developer. All right, 1 second. Developer tells me that this execute, right, when the message starts, execute gets an action info object. And that action info object contains the username. Okay, cool. So this looks good, right? So somebody point me out, show me that within this class, this method, I can get to an action info, and within the action info, I have something called get username. So that's exactly what I want to execute. So I'm going to go ahead and build my query. So I'm going to say, okay, you know what? Let's put this tracer on the client request execute method, take the first parameter being passed, right, which is action info, and do a dot and do a call get username. Right now, the braces, the little wiggly braces here, represent objects. So I'm wrapping that as an object, and then say object dot get username, and then you know, this whole thing is represented as an object. And if this, obviously this is returning, an info is returning a string, so I'm good. But if this was returning, say, another object, I could also do dot get something and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, what this tracer does is I'm going to get an object here, and I'm going to call toString, right? So if you actually have an object that, you know, that has implemented the toString and is displaying exactly what you want, then you can use this, right? You don't have to navigate farther down. All right, so let's try this out, right? So I instrumented client request. I put my query here. I have deployed my my extension, making sure that it's there, my generic. So I should be good to go. So let's give it a try. So we'll go here. We're going to bring up client Introscope 9.5 again. All right, so let's wait for our so they're starting to execute. Matrix is starting to show up, and I can start transaction trace probably, right? And there I got one, good enough. I'm going to start transaction trace session. 5 seconds is good enough since this takes forever. If I go here, sorry by time, this is the last time, you know, 11:30 is the last time I got a trace. So I'm waiting for new traces here. So hopefully it will work. Oh, and it does. Good. So I'm getting new tracers now, and I'm getting the user's name. Right? There we go. All my girls' names. All right, let me just. Okay, good. So basically, you guys got that. Very straightforward, really, really useful. You know, and again, like I said, it supports the old mode and new mode. Depends on what you want to run. Just a quick way to get a user ID into your transactions. All right, good. So we're done with this. Hopefully that should be straightforward. The next one we want to look at is transaction trace filters. We got 15 minutes. I think we're doing good. Transaction trace filter, what this is I think I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to use something else. Let me get rid of this. All right, so I'm done with socket, and I'm going to go to app server. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use another application called Ticket Exchange. This is an internal application that we use to train our own consultants. I'll bring it up in a minute. I'll show you guys. But what I wanted, the next, let me go here. The next extension I want to talk about is transaction trace filters. Okay. Again, this is you have to have the jar. Okay. This is a service this time. It's not a PVD. So you need to have the jar, which I hopefully have it deployed. And there it is, time threshold TTT filter. And now, and instead of, like I said, it's not a PVD, right? It's a service. So I need to configure this from the Introscope, from the agent profile. So I'm going to go ahead and look at my Introscope profile for Ticket Exchange. And here's the configuration, property to activate time threshold filter. So what this is, guys, is just a filter that you deploy on the agent so that you can capture transactions that take longer than X amount of seconds, just like you would do it manually, but you do it at the agent side, right? And you get to manipulate it. This is how, you know, this is It's a hot configuration. You can turn it on and off. So let's take a look at it. So let's say I'm going to enable my tracer to be true, and I'm going to tell it that to capture anything that takes longer than 350 milliseconds. Okay. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go ahead and run it. So if I use server. So Ticket Exchange, I'll show you in a minute, is a two-tier application. It's got a web and a server, and a web server on the back. And it looks something like this. Some of you guys may have seen it. I know our guys have seen it because, like I said, we use this to train them. This is it, right? Ticket Exchange, you can navigate. It's got concert. It's got our own Jeff Morris thing, and you can add to the card and do whatever, right? Like Ticket Exchange. All right, so I also have a JMeter script. So we're going to put some load on it, and we're going to look at the investigator. So I'm going to close this. And here's my Tomcat. Here's my service. Here's my web, right, with my front ends and so on and so forth. One of the things that I want to do, oops, no, I don't want to go here. I want to go to my config, take a look at my logs. I want to show you in here the output of that filter. It says, it should say somewhere in here. You see it in here? Let me rub this. It says Omar, I call it Omar, just to make sure I can do a quick search on it. Time threshold transaction trace filter is being configured as enable with a threshold of 350 milliseconds, but it's not registered yet, right? So we're going to wait for something. It's not on yet, so it's being configured. I wait about 30 seconds, and eventually I do this, right? When we get Omar's time threshold has been registered, that means that a transaction trace filter is in place. And it means I should be getting transaction traces at this point. And indeed I am. I'm getting transaction traces that exceed, anything that exceeds 350 milliseconds, right? You can see in here. All right? So now the beauty of this is that I can change this on the fly, right? So I can say, you know what? I want traces that take 6 seconds. All right? So I'm going to save it. So I want traces that are longer than 6 seconds, okay? So I'm going to go here again, and I want to show you the message. Says, hey, you know what? We noticed we changed. It takes about a minute for us to notice changes on the agent profile. So within a minute, we should be able to see something. In the meantime, I'm probably still getting those transactions, all right? Should be within a minute. Make sure I did it right. Yeah, it should be good. All right, good. So there it is, right? Configuration change, and it says that I'm changing now the time threshold to 6,000 milliseconds, right? So I go back in here, and now this is the last one that I've gotten. So I shouldn't see any more. I should see traces only that go above 6 seconds. Right, and I just see one. Well, there's going to be a lot less of them, but you can see now that worked. Right. Similarly, if I were to look at the server, this applies for both. You can see that. Well, in this case, actually, this guy only does one request. I want this. Sorry. And they're all about 6 seconds. All right, that's it with this, okay? And then, of course, you can turn it off, right? You can easily say, okay, you know what? I want a false, because I'm done with it. I was hunting for something. False. Save. And, again, within a minute, right, it should disable this, and we should stop completely collecting transaction traces. So can we wait for a minute? We'll wait for 1 minute. I want to make sure that this works. And then I'll go ahead and jump to the last extension. Come on, come on. There. Okay, that's not it. I did turn it off, right? So false. All right. Well, let it. Minute looks long. It feels long now. There we go. Is that it? Finally. So time threshold transaction is now disabled, right? So I should not capture any more transaction traces after that 11:53. Okay, there won't be any more, right? So very flexible. Again, you know, we've used this. This is really good sometimes to use, believe it or not, in production, because you really have a good control of, you know, of the type of transaction that you want to use. And when we actually disable this, we actually remove the tail filter from the filters, meaning, you know, there's performance implication, right? And so when we remove it, we completely remove it, and so you go back to normal, like never having a filter in there. Okay, good. So we're done with this. Hopefully that makes sense, and you guys may find that useful. And the last one is a memory histogram service. So this one, let me go open up another one. So I built this not too long ago. Projects, memory profile. So this is for memory, obviously to track, troubleshoot memory problems on your JVM. This comes with a jar. I think it's here. So here's my jar, memory histogram. I'm going to copy this. It's going to go as usual. And let me close this first. I'm going to shut down my ticket exchange. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my core ext, and I'm going to paste it there. So there, I pasted my my extension, my memory histogram service extension in there. And this is a service, so it's not going to, there's no PVDs, but what it has is going to have configuration on the agent profile. So this is the configuration. I'll go over with you in a minute. So let me copy this. I'll go to my ticket exchange. Yeah, I want this. All right, I'm going to paste it. So what am I doing here? So I'm configuring the memory histogram service to be enable, disable. Right, again, this is a dynamic property, so I can enable, disable this on the fly. So I'm going to enable it now, and I'm also going to tell it how often to take sampling, right, to take snapshots of my histogram. 10 minutes, you know, for our purposes, we're going to do it every 2 minutes. How many classes do I want to collect from the heap? The default is 200. Obviously, the more classes, the bigger the impact, right, the hit you take on the server. We'll make it 150. You don't need that many. And again, all these are dynamic, right? I can change the rate dynamically. I can change the number of classes dynamically. And the last one is the report, right? This is going to create an HTML report, right, of memory histogram. And I got to tell it where do I need this to store. I'm going to put it in here, in my Introscope agent. So it should go under here, logs. I have something called, I can get rid of all this. I have something called memory reports, and there's nothing in here, right? So that's where I want my reports to go, okay? So I'm going to save this. That's it. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring up my ticket exchange again. This time I'm going to use a use case that has some memory issues. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my server, bring my web, and my front end, my back end. All this comes up, and then we're going to run the load. And we're almost up to the hour. Oh, we're just going to finish right on time. All right, so both are up and running, so I'm going to go ahead and launch my my script, my load, go to Introscope, and it should be getting a responses per interval. All right, they're starting to come in. What I really care about in here is going to be the GC monitor. That's how we're going to track the memory pool. We can look at, the old, the Eden, doesn't really matter. We're going to look at the old, what is the amount of space being concurrently using. We see that this is going to start taking off soon. But one of the things that we do, one of the things that the service does is that first as it comes up, it takes a snapshot of your memory histogram so that you know what it was at the initial stages. So if I were to go then to my histogram reports, I should be able to see something in there. So memory reports, there's a couple of them. So here's the first one. I can delete this. Oh, right, there's a couple because the other one is for the server, right? So I have web and server. So here's my server, right? And this is what it shows, right? It says, it was taken at, this date at this time, and here's the agent that where I took this from, right? Here's my host, my Tomcat, and ticket service. So I pick the service, so I want that web. Here's the web. All right, good. Tells me what, how many classes I started off with, instances, all the information that a histogram that you would expect from a memory histogram, size, instances of all the objects, and it also has some information. We picked 150 classes, so there should be 150 classes in there, and it also has information on the perm pool space, right? This is where all the constants are defined, like the classes, strings and all this other stuff, right? So it gives you information on that. And again, you can look this up, and there's tons of information on what they mean, and so on and so forth. All right, let me see. Let me take a look at this. So this is going up. We said every 2 minutes. Good. We got another one. I don't know which one to switch. Let's open this one. Of course, that's not the one I want. So I take the next one. So here's the web. So let me close. I want to compare web and web. So here's the initial one, right? And here's the second one. You can see that, I started out with, 1,000 class, a total of 386,000 instances, a total of about 26 megs, right? 2 minutes later, I'm looking about 3,000 classes, 1.6 million instances, about 85 megs, right? And you can see my charts are going up and so on and so forth. And that's it. And then, we're going to get another one in another 2 minutes. And that's because that's the way we configure it. And again, we can dynamically change the rate or the number of classes or completely disable this service. At this point, Keith, I think I'm done right on time. I'll open up for take questions if you guys have some.
Yeah, I saw a couple of questions in the QA panel there.
Okay. Let me see, where is it? QA.
So the first one was this based on an installation that doesn't have a TIM? And so, yeah, there's no TIM involved. This is all within APM itself, right? There's no...
Correct. Correct. That is correct.
User tracer a field pack? Is that a... Where can our community members get a hold of that custom tracer field pack?
For the AppMap. For the AppMap. Yeah, so like I said, you're more than welcome to have all this, right? So this is not a field extension, right? If you guys recalled when I opened up number 2, let me open up number 2. We're creating this mapping. Right, we're configuring this, but these are things that you get out of the box. These things come on the agent.jar, so we're not implementing anything new. All we're doing is redefining them so that we have an owner type application and we have a node type called generic frontend and generic backend. But that's all you need, right? Once you define these 3 tracers, then you would use them, right, just like I did before, right? You would use them in my client. You would use them like this, right? You would apply them to your front end and back end. So there's really no traces, and I'll make this available for you guys. You can have everything except, you know, Martin's document, the engineering document, because like I said, it's confidential. But I'm sure that, you know, if you have a question, we'll be more than happy to answer. But you can get all this, Keith, you and the members of the community.
This is for the user ID tracer, where you're tracing, you brought in the user ID and you had that custom user ID.
That one you do. That one you would need, and you know, again, I'll make it available to you guys. A lot of our consultants have this. I have made it available for them. And somewhere in here, I have there. So what you would need, I'll give you this example. I usually ship it with this user simple example, which is this, right? This is how you map it, right? You define the tracer ID, and this is an example of using it. So you get this example, right? And then what you'll need is this guy.
Yep.
That's it. And yeah, you're welcome. You guys are welcome to have everything I showed today. That's why I showed it. What else? Is there more questions?
Yeah, I got another one here. When you were doing the transaction tracer filtering, the question was, can you define different filter thresholds based on a service?
Good point. So good point. So what you want to do in here is not only specify this, but get another entry in here where you identify probably the name of, you know, the business transaction itself, just like CEM does. No, I don't have that. This is something that I'm working on. Actually, you may recall that I was going to present URL groupings initially, and that is exactly it, right? In order for me to do this, whoever asked that question, I need to first identify what are the name of the transaction coming in, because that's what you want. You want to do it per request. Not all requests are the same, right? Each request have different thresholds. So in order for me to do this, I first need to identify, well, what is request 1? Where am I going to name request 1, and how is it different from request 2, and when am I going to name it? So in order to do this, when we do CEM, it's very simple, right? Because you have actually mapped it and you know the name and everything. When you don't have CEM, which is I'm working on for those that don't have CEM, we need to sort of do auto grouping, right? Somehow name each transaction differently, or identify each transaction differently. Once we have that, then we can assign thresholds to each one of them. So that's a work in progress. Short answer. I'll come up maybe by the end of the summer with something like that.
Okay, there was another couple questions in the QA window here. 1 second, my phone's dying.
Okay, let me see. Can I look at them? Where are they? Using the user ID tracer, that's only for pre-prod then? Okay, good point. The user ID tracer, you don't have to use it, right? Because if you're not, you can deploy it in production if you want. And if you don't enable it, right? If you don't, let me show you. If you don't do this, then nothing's going to happen. And if you want to do certain production, you could. I have many large customers using this in production. It's an easy way to do it. Now, the ones that the histogram, which reminded me, this question, reminded me of the memory histogram that I showed. There is a catch with that one, right? That one only works if you're running your application on a JDK. Not JRE, JDK, because in order for me to get this, you need to attach to the JVM, and you cannot attach to a JRE. You can attach to a JDK. Okay, so therefore, most productions are not running JDKs; they're running JREs, so it's useless there. Now, in some of the devs and QA environments where you may be running JDKs, right? Then you can use this feature.
Okay.
How do you know what options are available for AppMap config, and how do you know what numbers to use? So how do you know what options are available for AppMap config? Again, there's many of them, you know, but the ones that I've shown you is the one that you would probably need if you needed to configure this. Because if you have a database, it's already we already have it. Web services, I think we have JMS as well. Web service databases, right? So if you have something else, right, then you will have to configure that as a generic backend, and it is exactly what we've done. So yeah, there is a lot of more configurations that we can cover. It will be more of an advanced topic, but in my point of view, I guess as an FYI, will be great for you to know, but otherwise you wouldn't need it. All you need is the ones that we have defined in this presentation, right? Generic front end and generic back end. Now, and how do you know what numbers to use? Yes, I got you. The ordering, I think you're talking about. Again, so what I've done here is I'm taking credit. What Martin done here is he went ahead and defined them, whatever they're defined. He defined the ordering, right, so that this exceeds anything that we have in that you could use as a front end. It exceeds, it's lower than front end, it's lower than than blame point tracers, and so on and so forth. And similarly for the back end, right, our back end marker, I think it's about -100,000. That's what he used, I think, -100,001. Okay, so we know this. You would not know this, right, unless you understood, how tracing and the whole thing works. But this has been done for you. So you just have to cut and paste this and use this as it is. What else? By the way, I hope that answered your question. Oh, this is Tom Oliveri. Thanks. You're welcome, Tom. Any other questions?
I don't have any more. I think that's about it. I don't see anything else in QA. But I do want to thank you for your time, Omar. That was great information. Really appreciate you spending the time with us today.
My pleasure. You're very welcome.
And there's
like I said, I'm going to work with you, Keith, to make this available to you, and then you can distribute it to anybody who wants it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Community members, there's a poll up there. If you would take just a minute and submit your reply to the poll. And unless there's anything else, this will be the conclusion of our call and webcast today. Thank you all.
This concludes today's conference call. You may now disconnect.
Omar, are you still there?
I'm here, buddy.
I don't know if everybody else is still on or still dropping off. I'll shoot you an email. I want to talk to you just a couple more things from.
Yeah, shoot me an email and we'll talk offline. Would that work? Keith?
Yeah, you still there?
Yeah, I'm losing you, buddy. So I said, shoot me an email and we'll talk offline. Would that work?
Sounds good. Thanks, Omar.
All right, buddy. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.